Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to class. Today we get to start on chapter 4, but before we do that, I've come up with a pretty hefty list of announcements, updates, things I just want to make you guys aware of. So let me get that out of the way first, and then we can get started. The first, recognize that chapter 3 homework, right, it's due this weekend, so on Sunday. So I have updated the dates for chapter 4 homework. Chapter 4 homework was initially due this weekend as well, along with a news analysis that was more of a critical thinking exercise using chapter 4 concepts material. I want to extend chapter 4 into Monday, and so I have changed the due date to next Sunday. So chapter 4 homework will be due Labor Day weekend, which is technically a holiday, right? You get Monday off. And just wanted to give you a heads up that I had changed that. So the only thing that should be due in this class is chapter 3 homework on Sunday. Chapter 4 homework, along with that case study, will be due, I believe it's the 6th, Sunday the 6th. That is reflected in Cengage. Hopefully that didn't mess anybody up. I think only one person had done the assignment who's just working ahead. So an extension usually doesn't mess anybody up, right? The next thing is I am still working on the attendance day issue for those of you who want to attend class live. I'm having trouble downloading your report of choice preferences from BB Learn, but I've got somebody working on that, so I'll try and get that all rectified today and let you know which day you'll be attending. Another reminder that you are going to need to pay for Cengage pretty quick-like. I think probably within a couple of days. I don't know exactly when you guys signed up, but you're probably a couple days away from needing to pay. If you let that lapse, it usually involves a 2-hour-long hold with Cengage to try and get everything reactivated and paid for. Not only that, you lose access. If you are not going to be able to pay in time, you need to work ahead. You need to get homework done early in order to account for that. So if you know you're going to lose access in 2 days, you need to get your chapter 3 homework done. If you're not sure if you're going to have it for another week, you might want to think about getting chapter 4 homework done. Okay, so please plan accordingly. Jake, you have your hand up. What's up?
Yeah, so we had to put our credit card information in when we signed up. Is it not gonna just like move into us paying for it, or what do you mean the 2-hour
I think you already paid for it. I think if you put credit card in, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you actually put credit card information in, it did pay for it. Like you did pay for it. If you didn't put credit card information in and you have access to it, you are on the 2-week free trial.
Okay.
Yeah, and somebody correct me if you think I'm wrong on that, but I don't think in order to get the free trial, you had to enter any credit card information. You just pushed a button that said, I want to do the 2-week free trial. So I bet it's already on, it's already been charged to your credit card, Jake.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty. All right, thank you. And if not, I can still, I'll
Oh,
figure it
okay.
out.
No, hang on. So Quinn says, no, even with the credit card, you have to go back in and pay. So there must be a button where you have to go back and confirm.
Okay, so weird. All right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is weird.
No worries.
Yeah, just
Thank you,
double
guys.
check it.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, everybody just double check. Make sure. Okay. But you really don't want that to lapse. So just a heads up on that. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about is your homework scores. You, on average, I went and looked at your homework scores, are not doing as well as I would like you to be doing on your homework. Okay, I know the homework's not easy, but I also noticed a couple of things. A, you weren't spending a lot of physical time on your homework. So I can actually tell what the average student is spending on homework and actually what specific students are spending. So you're not spending a lot of time. So please give yourself more time and dedicate more time to that to try and get the answer right the first time, and also to make sure that you have time to do all your attempts. The other thing is, nobody is coming to see me during office hours. If you are not doing well and you would like help with homework, office hours is a great time to get that help. What should we be getting on the homework? Well, it's averaging in the 70 percentile. It's averaging as a C. You should definitely be getting B's on homework, if not A's. You have a week to do it. And I've given you plenty of, every single assignment for the entire semester is already available to you. So you kind of have all the flexibility in the world to be working on assignments. I get this question often: is it possible to switch from do not harm to highest score? I'll look into it. I'll take it into consideration. Okay, I'll make a note. I'll think about it. I'm not telling you I'll change my mind.
I'd just like to mention something previously about Cengage. I'm looking at the part where if you put in your credit card, it does state on the page where you put that information, after 7 days, your credit card will be charged unless you cancel by visiting the My Subscription page accessible from your dashboard. So if you put your credit card in, it seems like it'll automatically charge you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the update. Great. Okay. Okay, this is not a democracy. Sorry, friends. Okay, but I will take it into consideration and I'll let you know. Okay, somebody else raise their hand. Janine?
Oh, no, sorry, that was an accident.
That's okay. Did somebody else raise their hand? You can't, Anthony, economic incentives are a thing. So do your best. Okay, give me your best and final offer. Okay. All right. So let's spend more time on homework and oh my gosh. Let's spend more time on homework and let's come to office hours, right? If you need help, start working ahead of time. You know, you can put in an answer and just save it without submitting it. And so typically, I do have students who go through, do all the questions, and then perhaps come to my office hours. We'll go through them, double check them before they're submitted. So food for thought, right? Is would you rather us do SI or office hours? Doesn't matter, but please do one. Okay, your SI can help you with homework too. She actually has access to Cengage and can get the answers. And we all have different versions, not all of us, but there are many different versions of every question, but she can be really helpful in going over that. No, it's Savannah's job to help you with questions. It's also my job. There are no stupid questions. So please, please, please. I get tired of sitting for this hour by myself. You should swing by and ask me a couple questions about your homework, and then you can just get them right. Okay? Okay, so, okay, so that brings me to the SI extra credit, and Vidal, hopefully this will help answer your question. SI extra credit, that early extra credit that I offered you if you went to 2 SI sessions within the first 2.5 weeks, that ends, I believe, tomorrow with the last SI session of the week tomorrow. So hopefully you've gotten at least one in and you can get that second one. You can go to as many as you want, obviously, but the only way you would get extra credit from coming to my office hours is if the SI times don't work for you at all. So the extra credit that I offer you for going to SI early is because I physically want you to get comfortable with that exercise. Putting it on your calendar, going and sitting with Savannah, getting familiar with what she can offer you. The SI extra credit that I'm going to offer you the week before each exam is a little different. She has very set times, and I know that there are going to be a couple of you that physically have other classes and other things during every single one of her SI sessions. If you cannot attend one of her SI sessions the week before an exam to get that extra credit, you can schedule time with me, and I will give you extra credit for spending time with me instead of her, but you would have to prove to me that you're not available, if that makes sense. Okay. Alexandra, there's no democracy. Okay, don't worry about it. Okay. Another reminder, Cengage grades, your grade on Cengage will always be your most current and most complete grade. The only thing right now missing out of your Cengage grade is the assignment that you submitted through BB Learn on the 3 sentences on how economics relates to your major. And within the next day, I'll be transferring those grades over to Cengage. Do not look at BB Learn. It's not a complete grade profile. You'll take your exams in BB Learn, but within a week of taking your exam, I'll put that into Cengage. Everything will be weighted appropriately. It is definitely the best place to look for your grades, okay? Right, so just a quick heads up. The reason I changed the chapter 4 homework for another week is because I decided that, well, there are 2 worksheets that we would typically do for chapter 4. But what I've decided is, because chapter 4 is such an important chapter, and because you haven't really done my worksheets before, is that I want to do them together during a physical class period. And when I say physical, I know most of you won't physically be with me in class, but that day is going to be Monday. So we are going to do the chapter 4 lecture today and Friday. I might have to finish it up on Monday, depending on how far we get. There's a possibility. But then we will do 2 worksheets together on Monday. So whether you're with me physically or you're at home, we'll do these worksheets together. You'll have time to ask questions. You'll have time to work on them. We'll sort of do them together. I'll make sure you have the right answers so that you can use them as study guides, etc. So here's what's going to happen, and I'll remind you on Friday again. On Friday, I'm going to post the physical worksheets, either on Cengage or probably BB Learn, and I'll let you know. And then you will go in, and I think ideally you will print them. If you do not have that capability, it's fine. You can transcribe it onto a piece of paper. You can write it out for yourself and be ready for Monday. But I think ideally you would print those 2 worksheets out and have them ready. Whether you are coming to class on Monday or sitting and watching class on Monday, you'll have those available, okay? We can talk about it more on Friday, but then you will be required to take pictures of your completed worksheets and submit those pictures to me. If you are physically in my class, actually, I don't want your worksheets back. You will also take pictures and submit those to me. Because we are doing them together on Monday, I will require that they be turned in immediately after class on Monday. This is different than worksheets that I assign you after I give a lecture and say, you know, by midnight tonight, I need these turned in. This is different. We're doing these together during a regular class period. They will be required to be submitted within probably 10 or 15 minutes of class being over. Does anybody have any questions on that? We'll talk about it again on Friday. These worksheets are worth points. They are worth 10 points apiece, which means that's 20. It fits in that homework category. So it's really 20 homework type points or homework category points for those 2 worksheets. So you really don't want to miss Monday. All right, cool. All right, so sorry, we're already running a little bit behind. I took way too much time. Okay, so chapter 4, important, demand, supply, and markets. We're gonna divide it up into 2 lectures. I think today we're gonna get through all of demand, and then hopefully we get through all of supply on Friday and part of markets, if not all. The worksheet for Friday or Monday, I will post it on Friday and make it available so that you can print it or transcribe it or whatever onto a piece of paper and have it ready for Monday. So worksheets will be done and turned in on Monday. I'll make them available on Friday just for the whole like printing part of it. Okay. So let's get to demand. Demand's actually the easy part of this discussion because you are the ones that demand goods and services, right? And so you actually should know a lot about this already because it's really a discussion about it, okay? So demand, by definition, the quantity consumers are willing and able to buy at each possible price during a given time period when other things remain constant. We're going to go through every single bit of this and explain it to you, okay? So it is the amount that would be purchased per period. We have to pick a time period. It's demand for the day, for the week, for the year. At Disneyland, I think they calculate demand in like 15-minute increments. You just got to pick a time period. Doesn't matter what it is, okay? But it is how much would be purchased, not how much is, how much would be purchased at each possible price. So if we set the price at $1, how many would be purchased? And then what if we set the price at $2? How much would be purchased? We're going to pick one price, right? We haven't gotten there yet, but it's all of those prices and all of the quantities that would be purchased at those prices. Consumers must be willing and able. This means that you must want the good and you must have the money to buy the good. If you do not have either of those things, then you're not included in that the quantity consumers are willing. We wouldn't include you in those consumers. You have to have both of those, okay? A willingness and an ability to buy that thing. I have no interest. I don't have a dog. I wouldn't buy dog food no matter what the price was, right? Can I afford it? Yeah, but I don't want it. I don't have any willingness, right? And on the flip side, I don't have the ability to buy a $10 million yacht. Do I want one? Sure, right? You got to have both. Specific time period we already talked about. Other things remain constant. Okay, this is just a little disclaimer that says that basically we assume your taste for a good is the same throughout that given time period. So if the given time period is a week, I assume your taste for pizza, that's what we're talking about, your taste for pizza remains the same on day 1 as it does on day 30 or day 31. Might your taste for pizza change during that time period? Sure it might, but I can't account for that. That's probably the biggest disclaimer on that. The law of demand says that the quantities demanded vary inversely with the price. That means they move in opposite directions. You already know this. As the price goes up, your demand for goods goes down. And vice versa. As things get cheaper, you'll take more. As things get more expensive, you'll take less. That's the inverse relationship. Okay, you already know this. All right, so this is an extension of law of demand. We know there's this inverse relationship, right? When the price of a good falls, when a particular good becomes cheaper compared to other goods, so this is a relative relationship. We're comparing the price of two goods, right? Consumers will tend to substitute that good for other similar goods. So if you walk into the grocery store and you see two goods next to each other that you consider substitutes, now that's a little subjective, right? To me, Coke and Pepsi are substitutes. I do not prefer one over the other. I don't care which one it is. For some of you, you're like, nope, not substitutes, right? So it's very subjective, but if one becomes cheaper compared to the other, and you do consider them substitutes, you're going to substitute the cheaper good in for the other one. Yeah, you do it all the time, right? I do walk into the grocery store if I'm looking for Coke or Pepsi, and I do pick the cheapest one because I simply don't care. For some of you, right, they're not substitutes. But for a lot of you, the name brand and the generic are going to be substitutes. For some of you, they're not. But you know you do this, right? Remember that here we're talking about relative pricing. So we're not talking about something being cheap or expensive. We're talking about something being cheaper relative to the price of the substitute or of another good, okay? Some of you might be like, I don't buy Coke or Pepsi. I try and find a generic, you know, whatever. Yeah, that's fine too. Okay, so that brings us, we're still talking about some of those basic laws of demand. The law of demand, also part of it has to, takes into consideration incomes and how the price of goods affect a person's income. So the income effect of a price change is also something that we need to consider with the law of demand. And that is how an increase or decrease in the price of a good changes your buying power, your ability to buy goods. We call this your real income. So if I say real income, I don't mean how many dollars you get every 2 weeks. I mean how much purchasing power do you have with those dollars? Because the fact is, if I take, you know, my paycheck that I get here in Flagstaff and I take it to San Francisco, it's not going to buy nearly as much, right? So it actually doesn't matter how many physical dollars you have. It's actually much more important how much you can buy with those physical dollars, okay? So real income is the same as buying power. So a fall in a price of a good increases your real income or your buying power. You were able to then purchase more goods when prices fall, increasing your real income, your purchasing power. And the demand, in this case, the demand for normal goods would increase. A normal good is a good that we buy more of when our income or buying power increases. So it's things you buy more of when your income goes up or your buying power. So either your real income or just your regular income, right, goes up, we would buy more of these goods. What kind of goods would these be? What kind of goods do you buy more of if you have more money?
Luxury items.
Okay, could be luxury items, sure. What else?
Definitely more Jimmy John's.
More takeout. There you go.
Okay, more Jimmy John's, more takeout, awesome. So
More
food,
entertainment.
entertainment, thank you. More name brand items, great. It's the category's huge, right? We buy more clothes, we buy more cars, we buy more food, we buy more, right? Appliances, we buy more, the list goes on and on and on, right? Most goods are normal goods. We'll talk about the opposite here in a minute. Here's the opposite. An increase in the price of a good decreases your buying power or your real income. Consumers are then able to purchase less goods. So whether it's prices going up or which decreases your real income or your buying power, or you might just have a decrease in income, like regular income, both are going to kind of cause the same scenario. You're just going to be able to purchase less things. Your demand for normal goods is going to decrease. So all those things we just talked about. But your demand for inferior goods is going to rise. Inferior goods are goods you buy more of, the less money you have. What things do you buy more of, the less money you have? You're college students, you are really good at this game. What are those things that college students buy? Because, you know, they're on a tight budget, they're trying to make it stretch, they want extra beer money, what? Sorry to stereotype. Yeah, ramen's a good thing, but okay, more beer, what kind of beer?
Definitely Natty.
What?
Natty Light. That's the
Never.
go-to.
It is. Is it cheap?
Oh yeah, it's about $20. It's $16 and $20 for a
Okay,
30.
there we go. Cheap booze, right? Off-brand. This is amazing. Okay, I told you.
Apparently, I'm too old for this.
I'm way too
I have no idea what natty is.
nice. Okay, so things like ramen, things like generic groceries, cheap beer, Little Caesar's pizza, for God's sake, right? Disgusting.
I think it's still cheaper to buy like a frozen pizza, honestly.
Is it? Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah. You guys are killing me right now. Okay. A bus ticket would be considered an inferior good. And I would say like used goods in general. So like if you're going to, you know, thrift stores or whatever, those are going to be inferior goods. The less money you make, the more of those things that you buy. In this class, when I just throw out like the word goods or goods and services, I am assuming that you understand I'm talking about normal goods. If I am talking about an inferior good, I will specifically point that out, but because it's really such a small category of goods, when we talk about goods in general, those are really the goods we're going to talk about, okay? All right. All right, so let's talk about graphing demand. It all comes down to the graphs in this class, okay? This is where it starts. It starts out really simple, pretty straightforward, and then it gets really gnarly, really fast. So please make sure if you have any trouble here that you let me know. Information is initially provided for demand in a schedule. And a schedule is just a place where it's a physical chart where you would list possible prices for that good and then the corresponding quantity demanded. So it's just a way to collect your data before you graph it. After this chapter, we won't talk about demand schedules at all. I'll just show you a demand curve and we'll move on, okay? But I'm sort of showing you how that information sort of evolves. It does help some students. The demand curve will have all those possible prices and quantities on them. Demand curves are generally downward sloping. They have a negative slope. Not all demand curves are downward sloping. There are very, very small categories of goods that could have perfectly horizontal, perfectly vertical, or even upward sloping curves. We're not going to really talk about those because they're so specific. Really, really, really high-end luxury goods actually have upward sloping demand curves. The more expensive they become, the higher the demand becomes because they become this sort of elitist good. We're not going to talk about a $10,000 handbag in this class just because it's such a small classification or category of good. And we'll get into this a little bit more as the semester goes on. But I think when we When we talk about demand curves in general, we're talking about a downward sloping demand curve, okay? Because of the inverse relationship between price and quantity, that's what we would expect to see, okay? All right, so let's look at one, and actually pizza is our example here. So the demand schedule is that first thing that you see to the left. We have just randomly picked 5 prices. We could have picked 100 different prices, 1,000 different prices. Theoretically, $9 and $9.01 are 2 different prices. We're just going to keep it simple, okay? So we picked 5 prices, and then you can see that next to it is corresponding quantity demanded at those prices. And you can see that inverse relationship. You can see as the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up, and that's what we would expect to see, okay? All we've done is take those pairs of coordinates and we have graphed them. Graphs in econ will always be set up the exact same way. Price will be along your y-axis and quantity will be along your x-axis. It will always, always, always look that way, okay? All we've done here is we've taken that set of coordinates, $15 and 8 million pizzas, and $12 and 14 million pizzas, and we have plotted those points and simply connected them, developing a demand curve. Having a demand curve that is this perfectly beautiful, constantly sloped line D that you see here is very unrealistic. This line in reality has all sorts of it looks like a squiggle, right? That slopes in the downward direction. There's no way it really looks like this, okay? But it is the way that we represent it visually, just because it's a lot easier for the eye and it's a lot easier for learning, as the case may be. So it's the same information, right? A curve simply is made up of points, a series of points. Every point along that curve D, between A and B, B and C, whatever, those are all possibilities too, okay? You don't have to pick whether you're gonna sell a pizza for 12 or 15. You can sell it for 13 or 14 or 13.50 or, you know, 9.50 or whatever, right? And so all that does is it gives us a curve that now represents all the different possibilities of prices and then quantities demanded at those prices. Any questions about this? So far, it's pretty simple, okay? Okay, so market demand. Market demand is the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity purchased at that price. We just talked about that. It's the demand in the market. Demand in the market is every single solitary combination that falls along that curve is market demand. Market demand is not one point on that curve. It's that whole thing, okay? It's all demand. It's the demand of all the consumers in the market, the consumers willing to pay low prices or high prices or whatever. It's limited to a given period of time. You always, on an econ graph, have to indicate what time period you're talking about. Usually we talk about it in weeks or months when we're talking about demand in a market. It depends on the market. All other things remain constant. We already talked about that. We assume your tastes remain constant from one end to another. And market demand represents the sum of all individual demands in the market. So for example, if I said to you right now, how many of you would like a pizza at $15? And then I actually added up, and you were my market, you were the market, and I was selling pizzas, right? I would physically add up how many pizzas my market would demand at $15, and I would plot that point. And then I would say, how many of you want a pizza at $12? And I would add it all up and I would plot that point. And it would tend to trend in the downward direction, right? Because the cheaper prices got, the more you would demand in terms of quantity. So this is more conceptual than anything. We want to figure out demand in a market. We need to figure out how many everybody wants at the different prices and plot that. Okay? We'd basically be summing it up. Okay.
Does quality affect those graphs, or is it kind of in a certain like, is it well, I don't know, does it affect the graphs quality by any means?
So are you saying maybe like the more pizzas I produce, maybe the lower quality they would be? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, or like the $15 pizza would be like from Pizza Coletta versus like the $12 pizza would be from Domino's, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, I totally hear what you're saying. We're just talking about just a certain pizza. So,
Okay.
so you're thinking about the market for all pizza everywhere. Yeah, that we could graph that too. And you absolutely, there would be right? I'm not going to touch that $5 pizza with a 10-foot pole, right? But there are $15 pizzas all over town I'd eat, right?
Okay.
So yeah, there's definitely quality.
Thank
What
you.
happens? Yeah, thank you. What happens when the individual consumers will demand a product no matter what the price, like gas? Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there in chapter 5. So hang on to that, okay? That has to do with something we call elasticity, but we'll get to that in chapter 5. Okay, Colby, sorry, I don't mean to blow you off, but we'll get there, okay? So the demand curve moves. It's a moving target, just like a lot of things in econ, in that entire curve can shift or move one way or another. And that shift is driven by primarily 5 factors. Depending on the class you're in, they could elaborate a little bit more on these factors and add another one or have less or combine a couple or whatever. But in this class, these are the 5, okay? So right now, this is just a list, and then I actually have a slide for each one of these, and I'm going to go into it in more detail, okay? Because this is important. But if I was gonna, and I usually tell students they should memorize it, but now that you have online exams, I don't know that you need to memorize anything. I would have this up front and ready for an exam, this list of 5. No, it's not really that funny, okay? I want you to memorize this, okay? But I'd have this available if I were you, okay? So first one is consumer income. So when consumer incomes go up or down, obviously that drives their demand for good. And if the consumers in an entire market have a change in income, right? Because some new industry comes to town and everybody's making more money, or because some big factory closes down and there's now lots of unemployed people, whatever it is, people's incomes see a big change that could shift demand in either direction. The other thing that could shift the demand for a good is the price of other goods. So we're talking about substitutes or complements. We'll get to that, okay? Like I said, I'm going to elaborate on all of these. Consumer expectations changes demand, the composition of consumers, who are the consumers in your market, or the sheer number of consumers, and the third one is going to be consumer taste. So let's go on to those specific slides and break it down. Okay, so change in consumer income. If we see an increase in consumer incomes, obviously that's going to change the demand for goods, specifically normal goods, if we see an increase, okay? So it will change our willingness, but really our ability is what consumer income changes, our ability to buy more of each good at each price, creates an increase in demand for normal goods, and the demand curve would shift to the right or in the upward direction. Increases always happen to the right, not only with demand curves, but when we get into supply curves on Friday, you'll find that too. The numbers go up, quantity numbers go up from the origin. So 0, 0 is your origin, As we move to the right, we get further and further and further away from 0, 0 because numbers are increasing. So we see increases to the right and decreases to the left, okay? With normal goods, we would see demand increase as income increases. With inferior goods, we would see demand decrease as income increases. You will buy less ramen and cheap beer when you get your first real job, I promise, okay? A decrease in income would create an opposite scenario. You would be less willing and able to buy goods. It would create a decrease in demand. The demand curve would shift to the left. You would demand less normal goods and more inferior goods. So it would be exactly the opposite scenario if we saw a decrease in income. Any questions? Okay. So here you've seen here you see what would actually happen on a graph. If you saw an increase in the demand for pizza, right, that entire demand curve would shift to the right. You can see that prices really aren't changing. The quantity demanded at each price, it's really going to change. You can see that at $12, after that demand curve shifts, $12, we would go from demanding 14 million pizzas in that market to then 20 million pizzas in that market. There's still $12 pizzas in the market. We're just buying more of them, okay, because of that shift. All right, the effect of price increases in other goods. So there are two types of goods. There are substitute goods and complementary goods. So when we're talking about a good in a market, there are substitutes and complements usually to that good. Not always, right? Substitute goods are goods, obviously, that we as an individual consider substitutes. An increase in the price of one good increases the demand for the other substitute good. So, for example, I consider Coke and Pepsi substitutes. An increase in the price of Coke makes the demand for Coke, in my mind, go down, and the demand for Pepsi would go up. So when goods are truly substitutes, an increase in the price of one would then increase the demand for the other, which now has a relatively lower price, okay? Complementary goods, goods we use together. Here we're talking about hamburgers and hamburger buns, peanut butter and jelly, things like that, complementary goods. An increase in the price of one decreases demand for both. So if I go in to buy hot dogs, right, and the price has doubled, I am going to buy less hot dogs and hot dog buns. Because they are complementary goods, they really work in unison. They seem to, the market seem to react to prices and demand in the other market. If you're in business selling a good that is a substitute to another good, you got to be really careful because your good is so affected by another market. So people who produce hot dogs are usually not the same people who produce hot dog buns. So if you're getting into the hot dog bun market, you are really sensitive to somebody else's pricing decision in that other market. You got to be careful, right? And then we don't need to talk about unrelated goods because they are unrelated. Your author talks about them. What even is that? Okay, so consumer expectations. This is the third thing that we find shifts the demand curve. There are two types of consumer expectations, income and price expectations. What this first one is saying, this income expectations, is that, and we do this all the time, if you expect to get a raise, if you expect to get that first paycheck, etc., you'll actually begin spending the money now before you actually have it in your hands. On the inverse, if you expect to lose your job in 2 weeks, that will also change your demand today. So we will actually change demand for goods today based on a future income expectation. Even though it hasn't happened, it's what we expect to happen. We will make decisions accordingly. The other one is price expectations. an expectations that a price is going to increase or decrease, right? Decrease is going to be the opposite. An expectation of a price increase increases current demand for a good. So if you expect the price of a good to go up next week, next month, you'll actually buy more of it today based on that expectation. Why don't we sell a lot? Why don't they sell a lot of big screen TVs in the month of October? It's statistically true. Because of Black Friday. Thanks, Lexi. Because we expect that in November, the price of big screen TVs is going to be lower than any other time of the year. Is it guaranteed? No, but it's an expectation, okay? So that changes current demand based on future expectations. Great, thank you. Composition of consumers. An increase in the sheer number of consumers would obviously increase demand for a good and shift it to the right. So we're talking about a huge influx of people into your economy. This happens in Flagstaff every August, right? We have a huge influx of consumers. And the demand for really almost everything increases. And we see demand curves shift dramatically to the right, right? Because our population increases by 25% or something here in Flag. A change in the composition of consumers also does the same thing. And when I say composition, I'm talking about the demographic. What kind of people are there? Every August, they take my target, right, mine, and they fill it with all kinds of stuff because then it becomes yours, right? They fill it with stuff I don't buy. I don't buy little freestanding microwaves. I don't buy shower caddies. I don't buy body pillows or kitchens in a box, or I don't buy all that. XL twin sheets, I don't buy that, right? But the demographic changes in a way that demand for those goods shifts. And they put them in that target for you, right? So composition of consumers changes demand for certain goods and services or goods and services in general, depending, okay? All right. Consumer taste. So this is the fifth one. And this is the one that's pretty hard to predict. And especially with social media, this is that category of shift that social media targets. Is they try and create demand for goods and services that you didn't think you needed, but it tries to do it in a pretty, very quick, very efficient way, right? Social media tries to get you to demand things you didn't know you demanded until the minute you see it show up, right? That's the point. So this is marketing, consumer taste. Consumer tastes are the likes and the dislikes of the population. We assume they are consistent along the demand curve, okay? We already talked about this. We assume that if you like something, you like it, and if you don't, you don't, right? A change in the taste of the population can shift the demand curve either direction. So if we can make people think they need something or they like it, right, we can shift that demand curve to the right or increase it. And the opposite can happen as well if we decide we dislike something. What is something that had, and there are a few, that had a dramatic shift to the left because of social media? Like, we stopped demanding it. We didn't want it anymore. Plastic straws are a great example, right? Yeah, plastic straws. How did social media do that? It posted a picture of a turtle with a straw up its nose, right? And it got a lot of buzz. And all of a sudden, you and I decided, of all the crap, right, that we throw in the ocean, we're going to focus on one of the smallest ones, right? The straw. Listen, it's great. I don't use that many reusable straws anymore either, or no, sorry, the opposite, disposable straws. I use more reusable straws. I get it. It's great. It's awesome. That is a social media thing, right? That drove that dislike for the product and therefore decrease in demand for that product. But we see it happen all the time. Didn't they also make laws about, absolutely they made laws about plastic straws in some areas. Listen, folks, we are putting a lot of stuff in the ocean. And yeah, plastic straws are a problem, but it's plastic. That's the problem, right? It's all the stuff. It's all the disposable stuff. Straws are probably the least of our worries. But social media drove that very dramatic shift in demand. Okay, I know we're out of time. This is the list you already saw. This is just like a recap of that list in a normal class, right? It would be another reminder that I needed you to memorize it, but now it's just another reminder that it's a good thing to write down and have next to you during the exam. Okay, sorry I didn't leave a lot of time for questions. If any of you, thanks Noah, if any of you want to hang out and ask questions, feel free. I'll hang out for a few minutes.